At 72, Evelyn wakes up with a smile, stretching her arms before slipping into a silk robe. She's not just living, she's thriving, passionate, confident, and full of life. She's proof that desire doesn't fade with age, it transforms. Yet no one told her what she knows now about intimacy after 70. The joys, the surprises, the things no one dares to say. And number 4, it changed everything. Ready to uncover the secrets they never told you? Let's begin with the first one. 1. The desire doesn't disappear. Evelyn never imagined that at 72, she would feel more alive than she did in her 50s. Society had told her that passion would fade, that intimacy was a relic of youth. But something inside her refused to believe that. She had spent years watching friends settle into loneliness, convinced that their days of romance were behind them. Yet she noticed something fascinating. Desire wasn't disappearing, it was simply evolving. At first, she dismissed it. After all, wasn't this the age where sex became an afterthought? But as the years passed, Evelyn realized that her body still craved touch, connection, and warmth. It wasn't about wild passion anymore. It was deeper, richer, more intentional. She began to embrace intimacy in a way that wasn't driven by insecurity or expectation. It was about pleasure, connection, and rediscovering her own needs. The turning point came when she stopped seeing age as a limitation. She threw away the old narrative that love and desire had an expiration date. Instead, she leaned into curiosity, allowing herself to explore her body, communicate openly, and embrace the idea that intimacy after 70 could be just as fulfilling, if not more so, than ever before. 2. The role of emotional intimacy in late-life passion. Evelyn had always thought that attraction was mostly physical, but over time, she discovered that emotional intimacy held the real magic. In her younger years, relationships had often been rushed, fueled by chemistry and fleeting moments. Now she found herself craving something more, something that made her feel seen, valued, and deeply connected. She realized this when she reconnected with an old friend, Richard, at a community book club. Their conversations were rich, filled with stories, laughter, and shared memories. There was no pressure, no urgency, just genuine companionship. But as their bond grew, so did a different kind of attraction, one that was rooted in trust and deep understanding. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, she felt something shift. It wasn't about physical touch. It was the way he looked at her when she spoke, the way he remembered the small details of her stories. This kind of intimacy was different. It made her heart race in ways she hadn't expected. It made her feel wanted, cherished. For Evelyn, emotional intimacy became the foundation of her passion. She no longer sought approval or validation. She sought connection. And in doing so, she found that physical closeness naturally followed. Love wasn't about chasing excitement. It was about creating a safe, warm space where desire could flourish without fear or pressure. 3. Body changes, embracing sensuality beyond physical expectations. Evelyn had spent decades battling self-doubt, wrinkles, softer curves, changes in flexibility. Each year brought new adjustments. In her 50s and 60s, she had hesitated to undress in front of a partner, worried about how her body was perceived. But at 72, she had an epiphany. Her body wasn't something to be judged. It was a testament to her journey. She started to see beauty in the softness of her skin, the wisdom etched in her hands. She stopped standing in front of the mirror, critiquing every detail. Instead, she began dressing in fabrics that made her feel sensual, wearing perfume that made her feel powerful, and moving in ways that made her feel graceful. One evening, she lit candles in her bedroom and played soft music. Alone, she let herself sway to the rhythm, running her hands over her arms, feeling the warmth of her own skin. This wasn't about looking young, it was about feeling alive. When she later found herself in an intimate moment with Richard, something had shifted. She wasn't self-conscious. She wasn't apologizing for her body. She was present, fully immersed in the moment. And for the first time in years, she felt truly sensual, truly free. Her body had changed, yes, but so had her confidence. And that made all the difference. 4. The shocking one. Why sex can feel better in your 70s. Evelyn never expected intimacy to feel this good at 72. For years, she believed that aging meant a slow decline in passion. But what she had discovered left her speechless. Sex wasn't just still possible. In many ways, it felt better. In her younger years, intimacy had often been rushed, entangled in expectations and insecurities. Now, it was different. There was no pressure to impress, no anxiety about performance. She had learned to focus on pleasure rather than perfection. The absence of stress made every touch more meaningful, every connection more profound. Her body responded differently now, more attuned, more in sync with her emotions. The need to prove something had disappeared, replaced by the freedom to enjoy. She found herself lingering in the moments, savoring sensations rather than chasing an outcome. This newfound pleasure wasn't just in her head. Studies showed that older adults often experience deeper, more fulfilling intimacy because they prioritize connection over performance. And Evelyn was living proof. She hadn't expected this stage of life to hold such surprises, but here she was, laughing, glowing, and rediscovering herself in ways she never imagined. 5. The truth about menopause, testosterone, and sexual health. Evelyn used to think that menopause marked the end of her sex life. When the hot flashes hit, when her body changed, when desire seemed to come and go unpredictably, she feared the worst. But as she learned more about her own biology, she realized that sexual health wasn't about avoiding change. It was about understanding it. She discovered that hormonal shifts didn't mean the end of intimacy, but they did require adaptation. Estrogen levels declined, sometimes leading to dryness or discomfort, but there were solutions. Testosterone, the hormone often associated with male desire, also played a role in women's libido, and its gradual decrease impacted her energy levels. But with knowledge came empowerment. Evelyn learned that staying active, eating nourishing foods, and even exploring medical options like hormone therapy could make a significant difference. She also realized that desire wasn't just about hormones. It was about mental stimulation, emotional connection, and self-confidence. Instead of fearing menopause, she embraced it as a transition, not a conclusion. Her body had changed, but her ability to experience pleasure hadn't vanished. It had simply taken on a new form, one that required patience, awareness, and a willingness to explore what felt good now. 6. The role of communication in a thriving sex life. For decades, Evelyn had struggled to speak openly about what she wanted in intimacy. Like many women of her generation, she had been conditioned to believe that certain topics were off limits, that desires should remain unspoken. But now, in her 70s, she realized that silence was the greatest barrier to true connection. When she started seeing Richard, she hesitated at first. Could she really tell him what she needed? Would he understand? Would he feel the same? The thought of being so vulnerable was daunting. But one evening, as they sat together in quiet conversation, she found the courage to say it. "This is what makes me feel good. This is what I need." To her surprise, Richard listened. He didn't judge. He didn't dismiss. He wanted to know. That conversation changed everything. It wasn't just about physical intimacy. It was about trust, about feeling heard, about knowing that her needs mattered just as much now as they did when she was younger. Evelyn realized that clear, open conversations didn't take away mystery or excitement. They made intimacy better. There was no second guessing, no hesitancy, just two people fully present, fully engaged, and willing to grow together. 7. Common sexual challenges and how to navigate them. Evelyn had embraced her evolving desires, nurtured emotional intimacy, and opened herself to honest conversations. But there were moments she hadn't expected, moments of frustration, hesitation, even discomfort. Age brought wisdom, but it also introduced challenges she had to learn to navigate. One evening, as she lay beside Richard, she realized her body wasn't responding the way it once did. Dryness, discomfort, even a bit of awkwardness crept in. She felt embarrassed, as if something was wrong with her, but instead of retreating into silence, she reminded herself of everything she had learned: communication, patience, and adaptation. She researched solutions, discovering that simple changes, like using a quality lubricant, engaging in longer foreplay, and prioritizing relaxation, made all the difference. More than that, she realized that intimacy wasn't just about the physical act. It was about laughter, connection, and shared vulnerability. Erectile changes were another unexpected reality. Richard faced his own adjustments, moments of self-doubt and frustration. Instead of letting it create distance, they tackled it together, recognizing that intimacy wasn't about performance. It was about presence. They explored different ways to connect, discovering that pleasure could be found in slow, intentional touch, in whispered conversations, in simply being close. These challenges weren't roadblocks. They were invitations to explore, to adapt, and to approach intimacy with a new kind of creativity. The power of touch. Sensuality beyond penetration. Evelyn used to believe that intimacy had to follow a certain script, a beginning, a middle, an end. But as she deepened her connection with Richard, she realized something profound. Sensuality was so much more than what she had been taught. One afternoon, as they sat on the couch, Richard reached for her hand, tracing small circles on her palm. It was a simple gesture, but it sent warmth through her body. That moment changed everything. She realized how powerful touch could be, even in the smallest ways. They started experimenting with different forms of intimacy, massaging each other's shoulders after a long day, dancing slowly in the living room, running their fingertips over each other's skin with no rush, no expectation. It became a form of communication, a way of saying, "I see you, I cherish you, I am here." Sensuality didn't require urgency. It didn't require pressure. It thrived in the stolen moments, in the gentle caresses, in the way they kissed without rushing towards something else. For the first time in her life, Evelyn understood that pleasure wasn't about an outcome. It was about the journey. Her body, her skin, her senses, everything responded to touch in ways she had never truly appreciated before. And in that, she found a new kind of intimacy, one that felt even more profound than what she had known in her younger years. 9. Exploring new forms of intimacy and connection. Evelyn had spent a lifetime believing in traditional ideas of romance. But as she entered this new phase of life, she found herself craving something different. Not just physical intimacy, but a connection that was deeply emotional, creative, and even playful. She and Richard began exploring new ways to express their affection. Some nights, they read poetry to each other, letting the words stir emotions that deepened their bond. Other times, they wrote letters, even when they sat in the same room, pouring their thoughts onto paper as a way to share what they sometimes struggled to say aloud. They also introduced spontaneity into their relationship, trying new activities together, cooking by candlelight, sharing stories from their past that they had never told anyone. These small shifts changed everything. Their relationship felt fresh, alive, filled with discovery. For Evelyn, this was intimacy in its truest form: vulnerability, presence, and the joy of rediscovering love in unexpected ways. She no longer saw intimacy as something confined to the bedroom. It was in the way they laughed together, in the moments of shared silence, in the adventure of growing older side by side. 10. Safe sex. After 70. What you need to know. Evelyn had spent the past few years rediscovering intimacy, strengthening emotional connections, and learning to embrace sensuality in new ways. But there was one topic she hadn't considered: safety. For decades, conversations about safe sex had been geared toward younger generations, leaving older adults in the dark. Many assumed that protection was no longer necessary, that STIs weren't a concern after menopause. Evelyn had believed it too, until she came across a shocking statistic. Cases of sexually transmitted infections among seniors were rising, largely due to a lack of awareness. She realized that just because pregnancy was no longer a factor, didn't mean caution should be abandoned. Many of her peers had lost partners, started new relationships, or entered the dating scene after years of monogamy. Few of them ever discussed protection. The assumption was that it wasn't relevant anymore. Evelyn decided to break the silence. She started open conversations with her friends, normalizing discussions about sexual health. She and Richard agreed to get tested together, ensuring they were both healthy and informed. It wasn't about fear. It was about responsibility, about respecting themselves and each other. For Evelyn, embracing her sexuality meant embracing every part of it, including the responsibility to protect it. 11. The mental and physical health benefits of an active sex life. Evelyn had always known that intimacy was deeply connected to emotions, but she hadn't realized how much it impacted her overall well-being. As she deepened her connection with Richard, she noticed changes beyond their relationship. She felt different. She had more energy in the mornings, a lighter mood throughout the day. Her sleep improved, her stress levels dropped, and she felt a renewed sense of vitality. What she had once dismissed as an old myth, that an active sex life kept you young, suddenly made perfect sense. Research supported what she was experiencing. Studies showed that sexual activity could boost heart health, improve circulation, and even strengthen the immune system. The release of endorphins and oxytocin contributed to better mood regulation, reducing anxiety and feelings of loneliness. Beyond the science, there was a deeper truth. Intimacy made her feel alive. It reminded her that she was still a vibrant, passionate woman, capable of experiencing pleasure and connection at any stage of life. Evelyn had once believed that aging meant accepting decline. Now she saw it differently. Maintaining an intimate connection wasn't just about romance. It was about longevity, about preserving her sense of self, about thriving in ways she never imagined possible. 12. Self-pleasure and solo intimacy, reclaiming your own body. Evelyn had spent most of her life thinking of intimacy as something shared with a partner. But as she deepened her journey of self-discovery, she realized that true sensuality began within. For years, self-pleasure had been wrapped in stigma, an unspoken topic rarely discussed among women her age. It had been portrayed as unnecessary, indulgent, or even shameful. But the more she learned, the more she understood that reclaiming her body was essential, not just for physical pleasure, but for confidence, self-awareness, and emotional well-being. She had spent so many years prioritizing others, adapting to relationships, and focusing on external validation. Now she saw intimacy with herself as an act of self-care. Exploring her own desires, understanding what brought her pleasure, and embracing her own body without judgment allowed her to carry that confidence into every aspect of her life. At first she hesitated. The idea felt foreign, even uncomfortable. But as she allowed herself to explore without guilt, she discovered something remarkable. Pleasure wasn't just about desire. It was about connection with herself, about appreciating her body for all it had carried her through. 13. Dating and romance. Finding love again, or keeping it fresh. Evelyn had spent years believing that romance belonged to the past. After all, at 72, wasn't dating something that younger people did? But as she observed friends re-entering relationships, rekindling old flames, or even finding love in the most unexpected places, she realized something. Love had no expiration date. For some, finding companionship again meant stepping into the dating world, an intimidating thought after decades away. Conversations felt different. Technology had changed, and the rules of engagement weren't what they used to be. But the essence of connection remained the same. It was about shared laughter, deep conversations, and discovering someone who brought joy into everyday moments. For others, romance wasn't about finding new love, but keeping the existing one alive. Long-term relationships often drifted into routine, losing the passion that once burned brightly. Evelyn discovered that small, intentional acts, writing love notes, planning surprise dates, or reminiscing about early days, could reignite the spark in profound ways. Love wasn't just for the young. It was for the brave, for those willing to open their hearts again, regardless of the number of candles on their birthday cake. 14. The role of confidence and playfulness in intimacy. Evelyn had spent years living by unspoken rules about how a woman her age should behave. But as she continued her journey of rediscovering intimacy, she realized that one thing mattered more than anything else: confidence. Confidence wasn't about looking a certain way or meeting an impossible standard. It was about owning who she was, feeling comfortable in her skin, and allowing herself to enjoy life. She noticed that the more she embraced her body, her laughter, and her quirks, the more attractive she felt, not just to others, but to herself. A key part of this was playfulness. The idea that intimacy had to be serious or follow a strict formula melted away as she learned to laugh during intimate moments, to experiment, to have fun. Whether it was sharing a private joke, trying something new, or simply enjoying the lightness of the moment, playfulness transformed her experience. For Evelyn, this shift was profound. Confidence and playfulness weren't just attractive, they were liberating. They turned intimacy into a source of joy rather than pressure, allowing her to fully embrace pleasure, connection, and the beauty of being unapologetically herself. 15. Redefining sexuality for a new chapter of life. For most of her life, Evelyn's understanding of sexuality had been shaped by youth-centered narratives. Passion was for the young, desire was fleeting, and aging meant fading into the background. But now, she sees things differently. Sexuality wasn't about age. It was about energy, self-expression, and connection. She redefined what intimacy meant to her. It wasn't about meeting anyone else's expectations. It was about how she felt, what she desired, and how she wanted to experience connection. The old definitions no longer applied. This was a new chapter, one where she was in complete control of her own desires and how she chose to express them. Evelyn realized that sexuality was a lifelong journey, not something that ended with a number. It evolved, adapted, and deepened in ways she never expected. It wasn't about reliving the past, but about embracing the present, fully, confidently, and with the freedom she had spent a lifetime earning. At 72, Evelyn didn't just rediscover intimacy, she reclaimed her power, confidence, and joy. Passion has no age, and neither does the right to feel desired, cherished, and alive. This journey isn't about the past. It's about embracing the now. So go ahead, step into this chapter with confidence. Your story is far from over. It's only getting better. Star,